Welcome to 4th and 1 with Faith and Kayla. It's your co-host, Faith.
And your other co-host, Kayla.
And we just played FIU.
We did. Well, not us.
But, you know.
But Tech football.
We really just put ourselves in their shoes, if you can't tell already by the last few episodes.
We're so invested in this team, it just feels like we're part of it.
Right, exactly. And if you were there at the Jones last weekend, you saw Waka Flocka just roaming around on the field, acting like he owned the place, as he should, right? Because Waka Flocka. And I just literally, that was the best move that Tech could have done, is have Waka Flocka perform for the students right before the game. Like, it just doesn't get more Red Raider than that.
You talked about how well they know their audience. When they brought in Shaq, they brought in Waka Flocka. We have a couple other people playing where it's bringing the hype into the game, and they get the students hyped. And then they bring that energy to the game, and I think it's made a huge difference going into the season.
Oh, for sure. Like, the game day atmosphere really just sets the tone. I think it sets the mood. And, like, again, you know, we've already talked about this before, but it just really goes to show, like, last year without all the fans and all the excitement and Raider Alley and all the concerts, like, it's not the same.
It's been a huge shift. And I can tell, you can tell, the players can tell, Lubbock can tell.
Yes.
It's a great day.
Glad to see it, Texas Tech.
It's always a great day to be a Red Raider. Let's get to the main point of this podcast today. Let's get into the game. Let's jump into that post-game ice bath.
Colin Schooler's tackle. It was awesome. He's a linebacker. He's huge, and it really just kind of lit up Red Raider Nation whenever he hit that first tackle.
Exactly. He had the third play of the game.
Right.
He had a huge tackle, which is kind of ironic
because third play of the game.
Yeah.
Like,
apparently,
it's ringing a bell over and over.
Exactly. We've had consistently strong third quarters. We've had, this week a huge tackle from Colin Schooler. Last week, a huge run from Eric Ezukama. Apparently, Texas Tech just works in threes.
That last game, we played Florida International University and won 54-21. But if you were there for the complete duration of the game, you saw that our first quarter was a little bit rough. I'm not going to lie. They pulled it together by the end of the game for sure, and we ended up scoring a ton of points and had a lot of people playing, which was good to see. Good right here before our big game against, UT, surprise, spoiler. But I really feel like that first quarter of the game was all the Tech fans were kind of about to pull their hair out a little bit.
I would agree wholeheartily, especially because we were playing a team that we were supposed to beat easily.
Right.
So we were kind of on the edge of our seats at the beginning of the game, as I'm sure, everyone else who was watching the game was. It was not the slam bang beginning we expected, but the way we closed and the way we played throughout the rest of the game was exactly as we hoped.
Right. We had a lot more composure there by the end of the game for sure, and it really just looked like a team there.
We did.
It really did.
The first quarter wasn't what we were looking for, but I think we can credit the rest of the game and the shift in momentum to defensive back Marquise Waters. He had a absolutely game-changing pick six that not only changed the score of the game, and not only changed the attitude of the game, but it completely changed the energy of the team, and it was evident to watch and see how the players shifted their mentality after that. We had seemed a little down, seemed a little slow.
Yeah,
we weren't quite getting off the line as we expected.
And our defense, it looked like they were struggling there for a little bit. There was a few wide open gaps that were not covered, and we started that game 0-7. And so when Marquise Waters had that pick six, it was like, okay, our defense is back on their feet. I was glad to see that momentum shift honestly happen in the first quarter instead of the third quarter. It's like we're finally picking up on our mistakes early in the game. Good thing, because next week when we play the University of Texas, we don't have room for those mistakes. We don't have room for, starting off behind, and we don't have room to not answer to those points. And it was good to see that we did that in the first quarter this time.
It was. And speaking of playing against Texas, just a fun little tidbit. The last time we beat Texas was in 2017.
Right.
We know that. The last time we started off a season 3-0 was in 2017.
Yeah, so, not to, put any superstition on things.
But knock on wood, we're nervous, but it's exciting.
Yes, it's
going in the right direction.
Right. So let's go ahead and jump into those players and plays that made the game what it was. Let's jump into the huddle. Hit me with it, Kayla.
This was some of the best team play I have seen from Texas Tech, obviously this whole season, but including all of last year. The chemistry we showed, the range we showed, the variety and differences in, receivers and plays and changes of pace and all those things that have to mesh together in order to create that type of football we like to see happened.
Right. It was not only the players, but it was also the plays, and it was just kind of like, okay, well, we don't have a few standouts anymore. We have a more well-rounded going forward, well, we have a long list of guys we can throw the ball to. And not only that, but Tyler can hit them in the numbers, and we can use that going forward when we play those bigger guys in the conference games.
And I think it was really a huge benefit to see some of that variety in receivers in comparison to last week, where we mostly targeted Eric Ezekama consistently throughout the game. Going into conference play, we now know, instead of it just being one person who can catch the ball, and that's who we're expecting, 11 people that are now available. They all received passes, and there's going to be names we're going to talk about here in a minute that you have never heard before, a couple we had never heard of before, and it's a little unnerving to see the changes, but it's unnerving in the best way possible.
Right. It's one of those seasons that really could end up to where at the end of the season, they're giving out awards to all these different guys. They're going to have a lot of guys to give awards to. Hopefully, that's the hope here, is that these 11 receivers continue to have great games, and we continue to have 11 receivers make plays. But we definitely need to attribute a lot of that to Tyler Shuck. He had a career high game. He completed 26 for 35 passes for 299 yards, and that was exciting as a Red Raider fan right here in the third game. I definitely think he's not peaking by any means. I just think he's getting better each week.
Exactly. And one of the things you discussed in the planning of this week's episode, I mentioned, this is his career high game. And you said, but he's going to peak at the right time. And it's because he's being led so well by Sonny Cumbie. And he's being edged along into that peak and being pushed to the peak. Slowly, steadily, he's improving each week. This week he completed 8 passes in a row consistently, which is huge for Tech football.
It really is. It really is. It's exciting to hear that stat alone.
And one of my absolute favorite things that I saw this week from Tyler Shuck was the consistency he had stepping up into the pocket.
He stepped up into the pocket so much where I was like, hey, make sure not to get hit, dude. There was that one play there where the play got called back. It was a flag, and he got targeted a little bit, and I was like, he's not afraid of anything. He's really not afraid to get hit. He's not afraid to take a hit. He's not afraid to go forward, rush a little bit, and slide, and that was good to see, honestly.
It shows a lot of trust in his O-line and a lot of trust in his receivers that they're going to be where they need to be when they need to be there. So he has that trust and that faith in the rest of his teammates that he's not afraid to get hit, and he's not afraid to say, this is where I'm standing, I can take a hit because I know that it's going to be beneficial to the team. And he didn't have to scramble much this week, which, can we just take a second to talk about our offensive line?
They did a phenomenal job.
Phenomenal job. Tyler Shuck had time to scan the field to see those other receivers. He wasn't just afraid lobbing the ball, hoping it got to someone. He was able to look downfield and have that vision to know where it needed to go.
Yeah, and I feel like the reason we see those 11 receivers make plays, they're the ones that end up scoring for our team, but it's like we've got to bring that back, and we're like, okay, so Tyler Shuck also had a good game by hitting those 11 receivers, and because Tyler Shuck had a good game, that means that our O-line did a really good job. And that's where that whole team aspect comes into play. And okay, well, if every player on our team does their job alone, it's going to be really successful. And I think that's what we got to see. That's why we had 54 points and 11 receivers make plays. And it was cool to see Tyler Shuck not being scared. There's nothing I hate more than a scared quarterback who's afraid to get hit. It's like, come on, this is football.
This is where you're supposed
to
be.
Get hit. You know what I mean? You're supposed to teach them since they play flag football. You're like, you're going to get hit. Like, welcome to football.
He was very fearless.
Yes, a little scary, honestly.
A little too fearless.
I'm like, please don't get hurt, Tyler.
But it showed, and that confidence and that trust is going to be fundamentally essential next week.
So we've talked about those 11 receivers. Let's talk about some of our bigger guys on the ends there. Let's talk about those tight ends.
I just want to discuss the beauty that it was to see tight ends this week. We have not seen them involved. We have not seen them playing. And this week, they played a huge role in this game. Travis Kuntz and Mason Tharp are the 2 tight ends we saw play this week. And one of them is a true freshman.
Right.
A true freshman. And the other one's been around for a while. But because we didn't really run any formations that had a tight end last year, they were really understated, really quiet. Travis Kuntz is the one who's been a Red Raider. And last year, he had a total of 14 receptions, 189 yards, and 1 touchdown.
Right.
The whole season. The entirety of last season. Yeah. And in this game alone, He had 53 receiving yards, 6 receptions, and 2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns for one of our tight ends. That's not something you hear about Tech football every day. Two touchdowns from a tight end.
And that just goes to show the difference between Sonny Cumbie and David Yost. Consistently last year, for those who were Red Raider fans last year and who watched a lot of games, we saw screens, we saw zone runs right up the middle, we saw short passes, and very little variety in our offensive play calls. And this week, we watched a tight end who had been there all last season have a career high game because he had the opportunity to get the ball, because we varied the formations. And I think he was such an unexpected player that FIU didn't know how to cover it. They didn't know where to go. They didn't know exactly what they were doing because they had no film on him.
Right, exactly. And I think that's kind of goes to show when you play a team like FIU, you can really go and look at all these different options within the offense. And so it was cool to see that Sonny Cumbie recognized that, saw that. We were in control of the game and in control of the score. And so he said, you know what, let's see what our tight ends are capable of. And it was really cool to see because our tight ends, like you said, have not always been so vocal for Tech football. But it's like this year, and specifically this year, people like Mason Tharp, who's 18, 19 years old, a true freshman. And let's talk about this kid. He's 6'8", but it's funny because
is he?
I don't know, because Tech football says he's 6'9", ESPN says he's 6'8".
So there's a little bit of controversy there. He's a
small
big
discrepancy,
dude.
but
he's a big dude.
He's a big guy. He's a true freshman.
Exactly.
That gives me chills because it gives him so much potential and room to grow. If this kid, so this past game against FIU, he had 61 receiving yards, 3 receptions, and 1 touchdown. And that
in his first collegiate game.
Yeah, his first collegiate game ever.
His first time stepping on the field, his first time playing for Tech football, he scored a touchdown. And I cannot imagine the rush in the field that must have been.
Right.
As literally, like you said, an 18-year-old kid.
Yes.
Fulfilling those
He
dreams.
was in high school last year during COVID at that.
Yeah, exactly. And he graduated early this year in January so he could come to Tech. He's from Klein High School in Spring, Texas. And he chose to make those steps to get here early, to get that extra little bit of time, to get that extra playing time, turn down 15 other offers.
Isn't that insane? 15 offers to come to Tech football.
And
you know what? To come and get 3 receptions and 1 touchdown in his first collegiate game.
Freshman.
So, props to him. I'm clapping for him. I'm rooting for him for the next 4 years for sure.
Exactly.
And hopefully beyond that, if we're being honest.
And his height is going to be
detrimental.
So helpful against Texas and so helpful against all these other teams because he's a head and shoulders taller than everybody else out there.
Right. He's one that I think we're going to get to watch, and we're going to get to watch him grow even more than this.
So he was a huge part of this game. Travis Coons was a huge part of this game. And I also just want to take a quick moment to attribute the tight end success to Coach Luke Wells, Coach Wells' brother. He has orchestrated them beautifully, trained them beautifully, and prepared them for these big games and prepared them not to be scared in the face of adversity.
Right. I think if I have anything left to say about the players and plays, the huddle from this past game, I would say the only thing that I hope to see change and get better and maybe improve a little bit this upcoming week against Texas is a little bit more focus on the special teams. We continually have special teams errors. That's not something we always want to talk about.
No.
But hopefully they recognize that early. There's offensive side of the ball, there's a defensive side of the ball, and then there's special teams. And special teams scores, and they make detrimental plays sometimes. But I feel like we need more focus and more practice in that area. And hopefully, that's just like an early season jitters kind of thing. And that's why those errors are happening. But hopefully in this upcoming game against UT, we see that they've put in some more time on those special teams for sure.
It seems like a quick fix.
Right.
The errors I saw this week was we touched a punt and then didn't recover it. So that obviously gave FIU pristine field position, which was a huge mistake for us. And we missed an extra point.
Right.
But those are simple fixes.
Yes.
It just comes down to focus and consistency and a little bit of training, and then you're good to go.
Right.
So
it's that fine tuning we're really getting into. And even in the past weeks, we saw those onside kicks we were not ready for. And it's like, oh, okay, so that's pretty blatantly obvious, something we need to work on.
Exactly.
And I think in the upcoming weeks, hopefully 3-4 games from now, we're like, hey, our special teams is scoring and doing well.
But what a relief it is to not say, oof,
our offense
or our defense,
it's special teams.
And we can fix that.
Right.
It's easy fixes.
Yes.
We can fix that. The last receiver I do want to mention before we move to our next section, Faith, was Trey Cleveland.
Oh.
He also was a receiver y'all probably have not heard about very much. We hadn't heard about him very much. And the catch he had in the back of the end zone, I could watch it on replay.
I hope to see a picture of it somewhere, honestly, because it was such a cool catch.
It was beautiful. So to walk you through, let's just paint a picture here for a second. Literally had defensive pass interference called against him as he was making this catch. Mossed the kid. I know that's kind of a weird term to say. It's like a very specific football term, essentially meaning he just reached and jumped over the guy in front of him to catch the ball.
Right.
While the defender was facing the opposite direction.
Exactly.
Landed on his back, technically out of the end zone, but he had the heads up play to make sure his feet were in.
Yeah.
And maintain control of the ball when he was going down. And it was a sight to see.
It was one of those things that you see and you're like, oh, you don't practice mossing somebody. You're just athletic.
Yeah,
you're just God-given, talented, athletic.
Exactly.
So
and
that was good to see.
Like Travis Coons, he's another athlete that had 1 touchdown all season last year.
Right.
He had 1 touchdown, 81 total yards, 8 receptions. This game alone, 36 receiving yards, 2 receptions, 1 touchdown. So the excitement and trust I feel going into Texas, knowing that 2 players have reached their season's high. Like they have already surpassed their statistics from last season in our 3rd game.
Right. And it's cool to see not just them 2, but like looking at Tyler Shuck, I'm thinking about, all these guys are hitting these personal records early, which is good and it's exciting, but going forward, I'm hoping to see them hit more personal records.
Like you said, it's not their peak. Speaking of receivers, Faith, speaking of Trey Cleveland, speaking of incredible game-changing touchdowns.
I think I know what you're going to say.
I would like you to enlighten our listeners on a small little life-altering event that happened this week.
A small little life-altering. I love it. So Michael Crabtree, if you were at the game, you saw Michael Crabtree got inducted to the Ring of Honor.
Which is a huge event.
It is.
Huge honor. Well-deserved.
Yes, and his name was revealed right after he was inducted, and it was really cool to watch. If you were anywhere in the stands, you got to see, the curtain go down, and you got to see Michael Crabtree, number 5, up there right underneath the press box. And while that was a cool event, and I was really excited, and I was at that game in 2008 when I was really young, and then the induction was really cool, but you know what the best part of that entire game against FIU was?
Enlighten me, please.
So during halftime, I accidentally happened to bump into the Michael Crabtree.
I'm gonna cry. She literally, I received a text that said, Kayla, in all caps, Kayla, I just met Michael Crabtree. Picture of him literally walking away.
I sent that to you, and then I sent it to my parents, and everyone was just like, no way. Like, you're like, I need picture proof. And I was like, all right, bet. And so I got a picture with him. So I bumped into him, and I saw him, and he was, in the middle of going to do an interview and whatnot, naturally. And so I was like, hey, I'm sorry. I have to ask, can I have a picture with you? And he was like, yeah, for sure. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, he's really nice about it. His son was there. His son is really cute, by the way. He's a little kid, a little chunky, so but it was adorable, right? And I kind of was just like, should I take a picture with him too in case he makes it to the league one day? I don't know, kind of weird. But no, I was definitely fangirling really hard, and it was slightly embarrassing, but like slightly very proud, just because I feel like a lot of people around me were like, are you for reals? And I was like, yeah, I'm for reals. I watched him, beat huge. Texas and catch the pass and then go to the league and come back.
Didn't he ask you how old you were?
He did. He was like, so you were at that game in 2008? Like, we chatted for a second, and he was like, or I was like, yeah, I was. And he was like, how old were you then? And I was like, well, in 2008 I was 7.
One of my favorite things about Michael Crabtree being there, I was actually listening to the ESPN Plus broadcast throughout the game, and he had some really unique and cool insight about Tech football, when he played for us, and then also now. And he mentioned Eric Ezekama, which was awesome. And what he said, Eric Ezekama reminds me a lot of me because he's big, he's fast, he plays big hands, and he's not afraid to run hard. And I was so shocked by that he took the time to not only know who Eric Ezekama was, but have watched him played and understand who he was and what he was doing. And it was so cool to hear him discuss our best receiver in a positive limelight.
Right, and that's a really big thing for Eric. Like, that's an award for, like, Michael Crabtree to be talking about you on a broadcast in the middle of your game. You know what I mean? I feel like I hope Eric heard that. I hope that kind of gave him some confidence, too, for the rest of the season.
You're hearing someone who was just inducted in the Texas Tech Ring of Honor discussing how you play exactly like them.
Like,
So
how exciting.
If that doesn't give a little foreshadowing of time in the future of Eric being in that Ring of Honor, I don't know what does.
Former Texas Tech players. Kayla, hit me with some former Texas Tech players introducing our new segment of the podcast called Big Dogs in the League.
So our big dogs this week were Terrence Steele, who had his first career start for the Dallas Cowboys. And for reference, he graduated from Tech last year. So he's probably 23 years old, playing against veterans who have been in the league for a long time, playing against these huge hulking men,
Right.
and holding his own. He played super well.
That's so exciting.
It
Tech
was
football.
huge. It was huge, and it was amazing.
On another note, though, Jack Anderson just left the Bills to join the Eagles literally today on Tuesday. And so that's an exciting thing for him, being a former Red Raider, to see that not only he has played for the Bills, but he is leaving them, but he's going to play for the Eagles, and he's still being, passed around in the NFL, really.
He's still being a part of the league, and he's being involved and still given those opportunities.
Right.
So that was a huge, exciting, momentous moment for our big dogs, especially with Terrence starting.
Right.
An amazing, amazing thing to see.
Yeah, I would hope that one day some of the players that we have on our team now, like Eric Azukama,
Mason Tharp.
Right. In several years, because he's so young, but I would hope to hear some of those names come out, they're switching teams, or they're going to the league, or they're going to the draft. It would just really be cool to see. And it was cool to watch how Michael Crabtree started right where Eric is now, and then he turned around and talked about him. I would just love to see some of those guys that are on our team now making big plays now, see them make big plays in a even bigger audience and a bigger platform with a lot bigger guys.
One of my favorite things about college football is learning players' names and personalities early and watching them grow.
Right, watching them flourish.
Watching them become those league players, watching them make these huge plays in these massive Sunday game changes like we expected. So when we speak about Sunday game changes, let's shift back to Saturday game changes. Let's break into the X's and O's of next week's game, Faith.
Okay, so let's talk about the offense first. So we used those 11 receivers this week, like we talked about, and the fact of the matter is that Tyler Shuck has not played University of Texas. So we face our biggest rivals this upcoming Saturday, which is the Longhorns. And I just really don't even like that word coming out of my mouth, if we're being totally honest.
It's like I'm gonna gag. Okay.
Exactly.
Horns down.
Right, but it's exciting though, because none of the UT coaches have ever seen Tyler Shuck. They have never played against him, and so therefore their defense has never played against Tyler Shuck. And I'm excited to see, once again, it's kind of going to be Sonny Comby's offense, his little team of guys here playing against UT, and I feel like that's going to be an offensive key for this upcoming week. That's something that I hope that is kind of in our back pocket, is the fact that we are really using every guy on the field. We're using our tight ends. We're using our receivers. Our O-line is doing a great job of keeping Tyler Shuck where he needs to be. And Tyler's doing a great job too.
We have a tendency to play very offensively heavy games against the Longhorns. Last year, we took them in the overtime, and it was the most painful game I've literally ever watched.
I think I was almost on the verge of tears, but I was also
tears in my eyes now.
I was so mad that I was just like, oh, we were so close.
We were so close.
So
but
close.
We have that energy. We have that momentum.
Right.
But last year, we ended up losing 63-56. And with a game that high scoring, it just really goes to show that offense is prevalent throughout this rivalry and has been a huge factor in each game we play.
And once again, I'm excited to see how Eric performs this week, but also just the rest of our receivers, because they've, University of Texas has played Eric Azukama.
They know how to cover him.
Eric is a really good standout guy. Michael Crabtree's talking about him. So we know he's a great guy, and so do the Longhorns. If Michael Crabtree knows about him, I guarantee you that the University of Texas Longhorns know about him.
Definitely do.
And so it's going to be we're going to need to see those other receivers kind of show out once again this week. So I'm glad that we had that game against FIU for them to kind of step up to the plate, and also to see Tyler hit all of those guys.
But I have a lot more faith leading into this week than I have in previous years.
Right, exactly. So let's talk about Texas. The first guy that comes to mind when I think about Texas, University of Texas Longhorns, is Bijan Robinson. Their star running back had a phenomenal game. He's a sophomore. He had 3 touchdowns last week against Rice. You know, Texas beat Rice last week 58-0.
Like we said, offensive heavy.
So, yeah, the upcoming week, you know, offenses better show out, but our defense versus their defense is what's going to win the game. And
Exactly.
that just, you know, talking about Bijan Robinson, that just goes to show our defense has got to shut him down this week. They've got to shut him down. He is quick. He is fast. He is going to
Big,
find
he's
every
strong,
yes.
he's scary.
Yes, he's going to find every hole. It seems like he's got all the attributes of a great running back. And so important key players for the Longhorns this week, or are we going to let them run all over us?
And I think that's one thing I know for a fact is Rico Jeffers watches a ton of film. It is a university-wide known thing that Rico spends hours poring over other teams and focusing and picking up those tiny little tendencies that we would never notice. So I have great faith in him and Boyer Randall that they're going to be able to hold him.
Right.
And they're going to be able to hold back Texas. And we've talked about Jalen Hutchins and Tony Bradford Jr. and all those guys. They have that ability to make big plays. They have the ability to stop big plays. But we're just going to need them to put it on X Games mode. We need to see the best game they can play coming out against Texas.
They're going to have to stay on their feet for that running back. But you know what? If we can shut him down, I'm not going to kind of put too much superstition on this, but if we could shut down Bijan Robinson, we might have a very fair opponent right here on this game on this Saturday.
Faith, I think you made an excellent point in saying that if we shut down Bijan Robinson, we really can stall Texas.
Right.
Because in watching their film and studying the stats from last week's game and the weeks previous, we really realized that he is their offense.
No,
and
literally.
Their quarterback, Casey Thompson, is...
There's not a lot to pull from there.
He's there. You say that because it's true. He's had 15 for 18 completed passes and 2 carries the entire season.
Right.
Tell me you just hand off the ball without telling me you just hand off the ball.
Literally. And I think about it and I'm like, how do you score 58 points with 15 for 18 passes? Like, that I'm confused here. Like, where, you know, who's scoring? Where are the receivers at? And it's like, oh, yeah, Bijan Robinson is the scoreboard.
He is. And I think that kind of is a benefit for Tech because we recognize in this game and in previous games, you mentioned earlier in this episode that we kind of have some issues leaving gaps with our cornerbacks. Obviously, Texas knows that. All of their conference players know that. But with such a run-heavy offense, we're able to just focus on that central core of our defense, which is the strongest point of our defense, which can be a huge advantage and game changer for this week.
Right. And something that I've noticed in the last 3 games for us especially is that our defense plays a lot more time on the field than our offense. And if their complete offense is centered around those running backs and Bijan Robinson and centered around a lot of passing and not passing, but a lot of passing off the ball to give to other people to make the plays, it's going to wear them out.
Exactly.
You know, that game against Houston, I think it was whenever we had 40 minutes of defensive time and 20 minutes of offensive time. And let me tell you what, for 40 minutes, the same running back is going to get tired.
So Bijan Robinson really is proving to be the entirety of their offense. And that's kind of a heavy statement to say.
Right. It holds a lot of pressure.
It holds a lot of pressure. But a real advantage that Tech has is we have an excellent ability to switch out linebackers and those core guys because it's not just Rico Jeffers and Boyer Randall. We have Krishan Merriweather, we have Colin Schooler, we have all these extra subs that perform just as well.
Right.
So we have the ability to switch out the players when they get tired. We can substitute and we can adjust on the fly, whereas Texas is kind of put between a rock and a hard place when the center of their offense is one player.
And I think that goes to show that we have good recruiting. People want to come to Tech, and then we get them in the program, and we have several lines of people that are ready to perform, ready to do well. And sometimes, I would say that sometimes affects our consistency with the game, but it also goes to show that when you have several guys being played and starting different guys and whatnot in the beginning of the season, towards the end of the season when so-and-so gets hurt, or when so-and-so's not performing well, or when they've peaked and they're just not doing great anymore, you have that second and third string ready to perform. And so I'm excited to see against Texas. We have 3 games under our belt now. We have 3 wins under our belt, so it's exciting to watch like who's going to be put up next.
And you mentioned the inconsistency. Faith, I would love for you to talk a little bit about the inconsistency of Texas's defense.
So Texas's defense, we talked about how our defense seems to play a lot. It seems like Texas defense, the Longhorns do not play that much. And
either they play a ton or they play very little, because the margin of points in the past 2 games.
Before this past game against Rice, the Longhorns played Arkansas, and they lost. Good. It's just love to hear that, But the Longhorns lost. I don't care to who, preferably to us, but like whatever. Arkansas beat them 40-21. And if you were there during the game, whenever they announced that, at the Jones, whenever we were playing SFA, our fans, our students went wild just to hear that the Longhorns lost.
Absolutely crazy.
Right. And so it's just another one of those things to hear, like to put some fire underneath our players this week, and just, to remind them, Texas has already lost this season so far. We have not. And I think that just is going to give us a little bit more confidence going into this. And of course it was Arkansas, so very good team. But also just it goes to show their defense really kind of didn't show up that game. Not very much.
And with the defense showing some inconsistency and us having that variety, we have the ability to throw some curveballs at them.
So talking about those pigskin players for this upcoming game, who are some of those key guys in their positions alone that are going to be game changers this week, that they have the potential and the opportunity to really set the tone for this game?
I think one person we saw last week, they have Bijan Robinson, but we have Sir Roderick Thompson.
I love to see that.
And not only do we have Sir
Roderick
Thompson, Taj Brooks, and Xavier White, who are all playing huge games this season. Well, Sir Roderick came back this week. He's recovering from shoulder surgery in the offseason and in the first 2 games. But in his first game back, he had 16 carries, 104 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Like, that was his first game back. It was awesome to see that Sir Roderick Thompson was on the field, let alone 2 touchdowns while he was out there.
And he came back and he made his presence known.
Right.
And making sure that Texas knows next week.
Yes, I hope Texas saw those stats on Sir Roderick Thompson, because it's
not
going to
on the bench anymore.
No, he's not, and he is ready, probably ready to come back, and he's coming for blood on this game, I'm sure.
And Sir Roderick Thompson is such a strong running back. He does not stop moving his feet. That when we were only targeting Eric or when we were only running screens, he wasn't around. And so this week, when he was seen in the game, the crowd erupted. We were so excited to see this athlete and this receiver that we know and we trust, that he was actually getting targeted and getting the ball.
Right. It was cool to see Dalton Rigdon be back. It's just good to hear those words. Dalton Rigdon's back.
Back like he never left.
Back like he never left. And so is Sir Roderick Thompson, like coming back hot and heavy, ready to score some points. And I'm excited for it, really. Talking about players that are coming up this week, Travis Kuntz had that career high game. I'm ready to see him show out this week against the Longhorns.
He is one of those athletes that Tech has that can stand up size for size against a lot of Texas players who are known to be just very large individuals. Travis is a big dude.
He is a big guy.
He walks on the field and you say, "Oh, okay, like he's out here. He's not going to be easy to take down for Texas's defense because of his size and the power he has." So after watching him play this game, he's probably still on fire. He's probably still excited. He's feeling that energy from last week, and I think it'll show up prevalently in this week.
Right, and I hope to see that carry over.
We're talking about size. Let's bring him up again, Faith. Let's bring him up
Mason Tharp.
Mason Tharp. They have never played Texas. Granted, he's never played Texas. So
Granted, he's never played college football to the last game. Insane.
It's fine. He's a little green.
Insane.
So, what?
Whatever.
He's great. It'll be exciting to watch him play Texas, and exciting for them to see an athlete they haven't and to see some size.
Right.
That we're,
It's one thing to be big. It's another thing to grow into how big you are and then do great with that. It's weird to think about the dynamic of, if you're Mason Tharp, you played kids this time last year, who were 15, 16, maybe barely 6 foot. We don't know, but they were little kids who were just getting into high school. And now you think about Mason Tharp facing some Texas Longhorns who are maybe, I don't know, 20, 22. Who knows if they're 23, 24 because of COVID years. People could be in college these days for 5 and 6 years. For literally forever. And so it's kind of cool to think about the dynamic of what he's going from to what he's playing now. But also, he's right where he needs to be. He's 6'8", 6'9". Like, he has grown into his height and his size, and so it's going to be cool to watch him face Texas.
And he is such a blessing to the Texas Tech receiving corps because Tyler Shuck can throw the ball up there, and Mason Tharp can reach it.
Right.
With the full wingspan extension.
Right. Imagine having
put it in the back of the
big.
End zone. You can put it in the back of the end zone, he'll catch it.
Right, he's going to catch it. Like and not only is he going to catch it, but no other cornerbacks are going to be able to catch him, catch his arms that are so much larger and longer than theirs.
And I think hopefully leading into this game, Eric Ezekama, who has played the Longhorns multiple times in his career, has offered some guidance, has offered some expertise and some help to Mason Tharp to say, hey, this is what you need to prepare for and this is what you need to be ready for. This is conference play now.
Right.
It's bigger. It's more intense. We're playing one of the best teams in the Big 12. And it's going to be hard. And it's going to be different than you've expected, but, you're going to be okay.
Right. And thinking about the Big 12, mentioning it there, I think about how, we don't know where the Big 12 is going. We don't know who's going to be in it. We don't know any of that. We don't have those answers for you. Sorry. But we do know that if Mason Tharp can play Texas on maybe one of our last chances to play Texas within the Big 12, then he's going to take that confidence and that experience into next year when we don't know who's going to be in our conference. We don't know any of those questions. We just don't know, but we can know this, that he's going to take this game and he's going to have it for the next season and the next season to come. And not only that, but he's going to gain that confidence from people like Eric Ezekama and Sonny Cumbie, telling him, hey, bud, you're 6'9" and you're really good and you've played Texas. And it's going to be exciting to see. I hope he has a lot of statistics that we get to talk about next week on the podcast next week.
So just discussing some previous years, some new people playing Texas. For generalized expectation, we know Eric Ezekama is going to be an essential cog. We're fully aware of his greatness. Bow down, bow down. Last year against Texas, he had 1 touchdown, 7 receptions, 91 yards.
Wow.
I would expect the same, or I would not expect. I would hope for the same, if not more, going into this next game.
Right.
And
I expect him to lead the pack of the 11 receivers for sure.
He has that experience. He has that veteran mentality. He has those games under his belt. He has played Texas. He knows what they do. He knows what to expect. And he can carry that knowledge into the next game.
Right. And to mention another player that, we got to see this past week, Henry Colombi went in with 9:18 left in the fourth quarter and scored a rushing touchdown.
Which was really a huge thing for him.
Especially,
So we've broken down the X's and O's. We know this game is going to be hard. We know this game is probably our biggest game of the season. Faith, I would love to know more as a lifelong Red Raider fan about this rivalry.
So this rivalry between the Red Raiders and the Longhorns has been long-standing since 1928. That is so long ago.
1928?
I wonder if my parents were born. I'm just kidding.
For reference, Texas Tech started in 1923.
Right. So
5 years later, this rivalry began.
Exactly. So this is a big deal. And, it's always been called the battle for the Chancellor's Spurs, which I wasn't, familiar with. But that is a big deal, and that's why it's always been a rival. And it's, I always think about Austin. I immediately think UT, and I think about how much I hate the Longhorns and how much they hate us. And, all my friends that either go to Texas or have always been Texas fans, I'm like, well, we can't be friends during this time of year. So, sorry.
It doesn't, the battle for the Chancellor Spurs does not carry the same weight and emphasis as the Red River rivalry.
Right.
Or Bedlam or rivalries like that. But the fact it has a name says it's pretty big.
Right, exactly.
It's not just another game. Right.
It's not just, Twitter wars before the game. It is a legitimate rivalry that has been going on since 1928. So it's a big, if I'm Sonny Cumbie or Matt Wells this week, I'm pulling up that video of Michael Crabtree catching that pass in 2008 and winning the game for us, because I hope that lights a fire and gives them a lot of confidence and excitement going into this game in Austin against the Longhorns. It's intimidating. It is intimidating, I'm sure, to go against them. We haven't beat them since 2017, but I think that also gives us even more like drive to want to
There's
not just beat them, but like beat them well and with class.
there's a different kind of fire when we play Texas.
There really
And
is.
we compared Michael Crabtree and we compared Eric Ezekama, and history oftentimes has the ability to repeat itself.
Right.
So we're just going to keep our fingers crossed for those big plays, those big moments,
Yes.
and we're going to watch this rivalry game and get chills the whole time.
Right.
I have chills right now talking
I
about
have
it.
chills,
But
yes. And, I think about whenever we compare Eric Ezekama to Michael Crabtree, I think about Graham Harrell and his day and age for Texas Tech was so phenomenal. It's cool to think about how Tyler Shuck could be the next Graham
we're
Harrell.
seeing that chemistry.
I'm ready to see a Graham Harrell come within Tyler Shuck and win this game for us.
And we're saying some bold statements.
We really are, but I have a lot of faith in them right now.
But we play a different kind of football. When Texas Tech plays University of Texas, it is a different kind of football.
Literally, and I get that third quarter vibe, that feeling throughout the whole game. Texas Tech always plays a great third quarter. I want to see that third quarter for all 4 quarters, especially against the Texas Longhorns.
So, to wrap up everything we've said, to breathe a little bit,
Literally.
know the name Bijan Robinson.
Yep.
Know he needs to be stopped.
Yep.
Know the name Tyler Shuck. If you don't, rewind. Know the name Eric Ezekama. Know the name Travis Kuntz. And know that the Texas Tech Red Raiders are going to do everything they can to win this game.
Right. It is going to be a lot of offense for both teams. It's going to be a lot of offense, but you know what? Our defense just might win the game for us.
We have our fingers crossed. We're knocking on wood. We are not jinxing ourselves. But let's go.
Let's go. I'm excited to see it, and I hope to see you back here on 4th and 1 with Faith and Kayla.
Thank you for listening.